Go. Hey, welcome to the Born to Live podcast. I'm your host, Dason Robinson, and joining us today, we have 13-year veteran, MLS veteran, Jimmy Conrad. He was a four-time MLS Best 11 award winner, 2005 Defender of the Year. What else? 27 caps with the U.S. men's national team. What else? 2006 World Cup veteran. What else? And current head coach, I believe, of the San Francisco Glens. Is that it?
That's right. Keep going, Dason. I love it.
Okay.
I love it. You should be my publicist. I can't get enough of this.
He's just an overall great dude. And Jimmy, man, welcome to the podcast.
No, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be involved, to be a guest, and I want to see it grow. So hopefully I can help you do that.
I appreciate that, man. Jimmy, so could you tell our guests, our listeners, those watching, who you are, your background, and actually what you're up to today?
Yeah, this is a lot to unpack here. So to give you a really, let's say, brief recap, a dummies book for Jimmy Conrad. I grew up in Southern California. My parents had me when they were 18 years old. They broke up before I was born, and they got married. My mom got married when I was 3. I live with my stepdad. I have a brother and sister on that side. My dad got married when I was 11. I have 3 brothers and a sister on that side. And I love all of them. Everybody gets along, which is great. Everybody's really sweet, and I think that's to my benefit.
Yeah.
Now, nobody played soccer in my family growing up. My grandfather was from Denmark, though, so I kicked the ball around with him. And I started like everybody else, man. I started in the little peewee leagues, the little rec leagues, the AYSO.
Yeah.
And I did that for 4, 5, 6 years. And then we had a really good all-star team. And the coach that was helping out, who went to Cal State Northridge, I think I should take this team and make them a club team. And so we became a club team, and we were good. And that's how it started. And at age 11, he challenged us. He said, you should only play one sport at this age. And I was playing baseball at the time. Yeah. And I played basketball with my friends, but it was a little more unorganized. Yeah. And it was easy choice, right? Baseball's boring. I went and did soccer, and I loved it. And I still have lifelong friendships from that first team and a lot of good memories. And then from there, I did the high school route. If you want to get into that, I think the high school development is really important. I'm glad that the development academy didn't exist. I'm glad that I didn't have to have pressure from a youth coach to tell me I couldn't play high school, which is such an important part of your social development.
Yeah.
And also on the field, because let's say this, Dason, say we were both on an elite club team.
Yeah.
When would we ever be forced to be leaders? When would we ever have to figure out ways to raise the game of the players around us when they're just as good, if not better than we are?
Yeah.
You go to high school, dude, your whole team's counting on you to be the guy. All of a sudden, you're probably playing a position you don't play normally. You're probably the number 10 or in the middle of the field. You're trying to get guys that can barely kick a ball sometimes to just do the simple things to help the team have success. You can't criticize them because it doesn't help, right? So you learn leadership skills. You learn how to talk to people. You learn how to communicate. And you learn how to deal with responsibility in a way that you would never get playing on a DA team or an elite youth team. Yeah. So I want players to go back and play for high school teams. I want them to not miss out on that experience, especially the pressure you have from peers. Now imagine those kids that do have that elite experience. They go to high school,
right?
And oh, you're too good. Like your friends are like, oh, you're too good to play for a high school team.
Right.
Like what kind of precedent does that set? What kind of aura does that give them? It just makes them feel like they're too good for everybody. And that's not cool. So anyway, after high school, I had a solid career. I didn't win the league though. It's like the one trophy in my life I didn't win. I didn't get recruited out of high school, not very heavily, not by any D1 schools. And I had my youth coach, who was still my youth coach at that time. Mm-hmm. He called around and he talked San Diego State into giving me a partial scholarship. Now, at this point, there was no MLS, okay? Mm-hmm. There was no professional league to aspire to here in the States. And Europe just felt so far, you weren't seeing anything on TV. YouTube didn't exist. Like you couldn't watch games. None of that stuff happened.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go to UCLA. I had a 3.8 GPA. Okay, I got 1,200, 1,210 on my SATs. Mm-hmm. I skipped a grade when I was younger, so I was like Doogie Howser, the smart little guy. But I thought that would help me with my applications. It didn't mean anything. And so I didn't get into UCLA.
Wow.
But they had sent a note back to me saying, if you got into our school, we'd let you try out. I wish I kept that letter, by the way. I didn't keep the letter. That was the school I went to. This is the school I went to go watch games. So I got to see Kobe Jones, Joe Max Moore, Brad Friedel, Ziggy Schmid was the coach. All these guys that ended up being very important to U.S. soccer and the U.S. national team. I got to see that and see what it looked like, and that was the highest level that I wanted to aspire to. I always wanted to go to UCLA. Didn't happen, right? I got told I wasn't good enough, or I couldn't get in, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I got this opportunity at San Diego State. My coach called on my behalf. The coach, I never saw me play, but just buying into what my coach said,
Yeah.
gave me scholarship, like a books partial scholarship.
Okay.
And I went home and told everybody I got a scholarship to a D1 school when it was like $300 a semester. But whatever, I was just saving my ego. So I trained for that and made sure I was very prepared to make a splash as a freshman. And I started the first game of the year, and the coach was a little whack, but I got 30 to 40 games in D1, right? And played against UCLA, which was cool. And after that, I wanted to transfer out. I didn't feel like I was growing enough as a player. I didn't feel like this coach really knew what he was doing. And I wanted just to see what else was out there. Because I, at that point, knew which schools were good.
Yeah.
I threw my name in the hat at UCLA, called him cold, went into the office at one point and introduced myself when it didn't seem like he was giving me much love. Really took some big, bold risks. Yeah. And so Ziggy, because Danny Califf, you remember Danny Califf played the league for a long time, he spurned UCLA to go to Maryland. And because that happened, that allowed me to get into UCLA. So essentially, Ziggy called me back and said, listen, I'll give you 1 week to try out. I'll get you into school, and then we'll see what happens. And I made the team. I was one of the first walk-ons to start since Kobe Jones. Yeah. And I got to play. Now, I wasn't a regular starter, but I played in and out. And then my senior year, we win the national championship. But I wasn't starting going into the playoffs. 5 minutes into the first game, the guy that starts in front of me tore his knee. Wow. So I knew that I had to play. Like, he didn't have any other options. So I played the whole time. We were good. We had Matt Reese, Nick Raimondo, Carlos Bocanegra. We were set. We were really good.
You had Reese and Raimondo?
Yeah, Raimondo was on the bench. Yeah.
Okay.
Dude, we were so good. We were so good. We were stacked.
Okay.
And I thought then I win the national championship. I feel like I really helped the team and influenced us winning it, because the year before I was sitting again, but we were the number 1 ranked team in the country. We got knocked out in the first round by Fullerton. And I thought, all right, this team probably didn't have as much talent, but we had something else. We had some heart. Yeah. And I thought that really got us to the finish line and ended up winning the national championship. So that was cool. And I thought, cool, I'm going to get drafted. MLS now exists. I'm going to get drafted. I'm on the best college team in the country. The other 4 seniors get drafted, and I don't. Wow. And I was heartbroken. So then you got to make a decision, right? What am I going to do? Am I just going to finish out my school and go that path, or am I going to see this out? So I went into Ziggy's office, and I was emotional because I just thought, why was I not the one selected? So I end up going to train with the Galaxy, and then the Galaxy lied to me, the coach Octavio Zambrano, and I just got jerked around. So I ended up going down to playing in San Diego in the A-League, which is like USL Championship now.
Yeah, A-League.
Second division, baby. But again, it was very similar to my San Diego State experience. If I'd gone to UCLA right away, or if I'd gone to MLS right away, I wouldn't have played. I just would have been practicing. But instead, I got 30 to 40 games in Division I. Yeah. And when I went down to San Diego, I got to learn how to be a professional for 30 games in 6 months. Yeah. And because we were close to the border, we played against a lot of Mexican league teams. So Necaxa, Toluca, Tijuana. It was crazy. And those are good games. And I had to learn how to be a pro. So it's one thing to be in college or in high school or your youth academy or club. And you're around your friends. Most of them are your friends. But when you can become a pro, man, it's not about that anymore. It's about putting food on the table. And that mentality, that shift is different, because even though you might be friendly with one of your teammates, you're competing for the same job. For sure. He has the same dream that you have. And the more success that he has, that means probably the less success that you're going to have, especially if you're in the same position. So it's a interesting mindset. And those 6 or 7 months were really important for me. And so then I did well enough, got called up to San Jose, signed with the Earthquakes, and then all the other stats that you read. But imagine, I'm this kid that walked on, didn't get drafted, and I outlasted everybody that I was around. I played in a World Cup. I was in video games. I was on cereal boxes. I had an Adidas contract for 12 years. I won all these trophies, both individual awards and team trophies, and played in a World Cup. It's crazy, dude. It's almost like we're talking about somebody else, but really my gift, my talent was commitment. Yeah. And discipline and focus. And I was very good between the years.
Yeah. Appreciate you sharing that, first and foremost. And what made you keep going? What drove you? Because obviously you essentially got rejected from UCLA the first time, but another opportunity presented itself and you just kept going. Same thing with MLS. You didn't get drafted. What spurred that? Where'd you get this commitment from? Where'd you get this idea that I'm not going to quit? I'm going to just keep going because I have some dreams. I'm going to go after them.
Dude, I'll make it really simple. I'm a king at long answers, but I'll make this one short. Yeah. I didn't want anybody else to tell me what I was good or not at. Or I didn't even think I said that right, but I just didn't want anybody else to say, you're not good enough, and then I would believe them. Like, nobody has the right to tell me what I'm good or not at, right? Yeah. That's up for me to decide. And so some of the best advice I ever got was Marcelo Balboa. He played in 2 World Cups, and his dad was a pretty popular coach and in Southern California. And my coach kind of knew him, but he saw him at a tournament and brought him over. Hey, can you come talk to my kids? And I'm sure Louis was his name, was probably like, oh my God, I got to talk to another set of kids. But he comes over and I raise my hand. And my one question is, and I get this question a lot, I'm sure you do too. How do you become a pro? What did Marcelo Balboa do to play in a World Cup? And I think you've probably already gained from me. If somebody asks me that, I'm going to give you like a 50-minute answer. But he tells me within 30 seconds, he just went to the park and worked on his game every day by himself for 2 hours a day.
Wow.
And so I took that and he moved on to the next question. But I sat there and I listened and I absorbed what he said. Yeah. And it was at that moment, man, that I knew that it was up to me to decide how good I was going to be. Yeah. It was not up to anybody else. My parents can't practice for me. I'm not going to get better by playing video games. If I really want to get good at something, I have to put that time in. Right. I have kids that these questions that come in, I'm sure it's the same. They all want the secret. Dude, there is no secret. It's just you have to put the work in. That's the secret. You have to do the work. And so that was a really big moment for me. So every time I got a door shut in my face, I would just find another door to open. You know, I'd find another way to get there because I was not going to be denied. I had to push. I had to prove that I could do it. And so I can't tell you the satisfaction I got when I got to play at a World Cup and hold my own against some of the best players in the world.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that, man, here in a bit. But I appreciate you, like I said, being, really vulnerable and just saying, hey, I didn't give up, and sharing with us what your mindset was, because, like you said, the secret sauce. I think if we could say these are the steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and do these things, and then we'll have immeasurable success, I think a lot of people would do it. But like you just said, there's no real secret sauce, no juice, Michael's secret stuff. You know what I mean? There's none of that. It is hard work, man. And also, I think what I've realized even over the last couple of years or so, it's like, man, why did I make it? What was the difference between me and others? Because growing up, there were players better than me and better foot skills and all the above. But one thing I discovered for me was competitiveness. Like, I didn't realize it because that's what I want to do. I want to win. But the competitiveness was, I believe, one of my distinguishing traits that really helped me push and get through and things like that. So I think if anybody's watching or listening, that there's something that you're going after and you got denied, number one, do what Jimmy said and don't give up, right? Try to find another path, try to find another way in. And then number two, that dedication, that commitment, find out what is your distinguishing trait, what is your competitive advantage, and just pour all the way into that.
No, I'm going to piggyback on that a little bit because it is good advice and something that I know, but I don't always say when I have the opportunity to do interviews or to speak on my own stuff. There's something to be said for competitiveness. And I got some great information from a teammate after I was already a pro, right? Because sometimes when you're younger, you don't know how to verbalize what you're doing or your disciplines and your habits. You're still trying to form everything, right? Mm-hmm. But I got great advice, whereas you try to win everything that you do. I mean, it can be warm-ups. It can be the sprints. You might not win them, but if you're pushing yourself to try to win them, that is the energy that's really going to start to separate you from everybody else. Mm. It can be 5v5. It can be crossbar challenge. It can be when you play 11v11. Like, you have to, what you're doing is, and I think this speaks to what made you such a successful pro, was you're cultivating and forming the mindset that you need to be a winner. Yeah. And also to not like losing and to figure out, okay, I lost this time. I don't want that feeling again. What do I have to change? And I think it makes you more adaptable. You can really reshape yourself and be open to criticism and be open to how to get better, right? I mean, if you're winning at all costs, you're always taking information from people. I want to be the best. So what do I have to do to get there? Right. So you take bits and pieces, right? Hopefully when whoever's watching will take bits and pieces and apply it in their own way and hopefully pay it forward to when they become successful and to the next generation. But I really like that because the competitiveness maybe isn't talked about enough because of how it does shape your mentality and creates habits and disciplines that are going to lend itself to success to what you do, even if it's not sport. Because I know you're probably going to ask me about what I do now, and it's a lot of media related stuff, and I got to do some incredible stuff, but ultimately it's because I still have the same habits and discipline and hard work, and that's why people and brands want to work with me.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That helps me out too. That definitely helps me out. As a pro, obviously you played a long time, double digits. Like I said, had a lot of success during your time as a professional. Why do you think you, out of everybody else or a lot of other players, had the level of success that you had?
I would say a lot of what my success was due to consistency. I would take notes on some of the older players. I think that's part of the cycle, right? When you're a younger player, you get to be around other older players. I had the opportunity when I got to train with the Galaxy to be around Robin Fraser, Greg Vanney, guys that ended up having double-digit careers as well, Dan Kalichman. And you just ask them questions, and they end up becoming a resource for you in a lot of different ways. So that was a really great time for me. And I just happened to fall into a team that was pretty nurturing for the most part. I think they could sense that I was just trying to give it everything that I had, and that I had a little bit that was worth at least giving more looks to. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for the Galaxy. But then when I got moved up the ladder, I'm around John Doyle. I'm around, even in Kansas City, I'm around Tony Meola. Like, it doesn't have to be the same position, but you're around these older guys and you start to take bits and pieces of, that's how you become a pro. Or, I don't want to do it like that. That's not how I would do it. Or that's not how I would lead if I became captain. That type of stuff. So I think it's really important to be aware and to keep everything, to always be open to anything that's hitting you. So that would be one thing that I'm thinking about at the moment. One thing I wanted to add too, really quick, because I think it's important, and these are the little things that, and I'm sure you've gone through them too, where and these are the struggles, right? And this is where you determine whether you really want it or not. But I get back to that competitiveness. So Danny Pena, I don't know if you've ever seen Danny Pena. He was an indoor legend with just 2 foot. Anybody that walked by him or looked at him wrong. He smoked cigarettes during halftime of games for the Galaxy back in the day. Like, just tough as nails, this guy. Even I think Robin Fraser and Greg Vanney and all these guys were scared of Danny Pena. Like, you're just scared of DP, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a guy that's just coming to training, and we do this running exercise, and I'm in his group. And he basically tells all the younger players, anybody that's on there, that they need to run at his speed. One of those older guys doesn't really want to push it, and it's a fitness thing, and I'm in charge of this. We're running at this speed. Right. But I wasn't on the team. You know what I mean? So how am I going to stand out if I'm just jogging with the old guy who doesn't want to run? So I end up just saying, screw it. I'm just going to run. I have to prove myself. And so I ran, and dude, I was like almost a full lap ahead of these guys. And he was hot because I'm making him look bad in some capacity. Right. But that wasn't I wasn't trying to make him look bad. I was just trying to prove myself. And anyway, so he pulls me aside and he says, basically tears me a new one. And I start crying. Because why would he do that to somebody? I can still hurt. Actually, I can feel myself get like this. Okay. Yeah. I can almost feel me getting emotional because I couldn't understand why you treat another human being like that. Like, I'm trying to make the team, man. I'm not on the team. So I have to prove myself. And once he saw how much it meant to me, I'm going to start crying, dude. Once he saw how much it meant to me, then he backed off and he became my friend. And then I actually tackled him like 3 weeks later, and he has a scar on his leg to this day from one of my tackles. So I guess it all comes full circle. But I remember having a lot of those moments where people would tell you how you should feel and how you should act and how you should play. And of course, you're going to take that feedback. But when it's trying to limit you from being your best, that really hurt me. And at that point, like I said, he showed me nothing but respect after that because he knew it meant something to me.
Wow, that's a powerful story, man. Like I said, appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, dude, I actually can feel myself getting it's like I haven't actually properly dealt with that story and the fallout from that. But those are the little things that drive you. And you have a lot of those along the way where you can choose. Do I fall into that and take the path that's a little easier, or do I continue to try to push every single day? If you're trying to get better every single day and try to be better than you were the day before, you're going to get somewhere. You might not get exactly to where you want to get, like these extreme heights of playing in a World Cup. Right. But I bet you wouldn't be too far below it. And even all that journey would be worth it. It just depends on how you look at it. But a lot of people are afraid to take those risks. They're afraid to put themselves out there because they fear failure. And I think also what happens as a professional, and you can talk about it as well, and I do want to hear from you actually, is that once you start to get comfortable with failure and learning from it in a positive way, nothing can hold you back at that point.
Yeah, you know what? Failure and losing, and whether it was an injury or something that just didn't go right, it is really about how you bounce back from it, how you go through it, deal with it. And like a prime example for me, it was a great game. I should say this. It was a game against the Galaxy. I was with the Fire, and this is an ESPN game. So I'm telling everybody, hey, watch ESPN, prime time, whatever. Man, I had the worst game in my career. Mike McGee, shout out to Mike McGee. This man didn't even do a move. He didn't do any scissors or anything. He just like fake crossed it or shot it. I don't know. Cut inside, slotted it side netting. And then it was another play. Landon outran me and all that type of stuff on a breakaway. And it was just a horrible game. And long story.
No, don't give me the long story short. I want at least some of the long story. Like, how did he respond to that? Because I feel like You want more, you actually want secret sauce. Like dealing with that type of adversity is really important. And a lot of people don't know how to cope with that. So what did you do to cope? Because it's hard. You don't want to talk to anybody. It's hard to make eye contact. You let the team down. It was on TV.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what to say to you, even though they know you can perform better.
Yeah.
Well, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, in this instance, I believe my teammate Chris Rolfe helped me because we were in the tubs, right? In cold tub, hot tub. And I think I was there and I was talking about, just because I had been hurt so much and I was so grateful to just be out there. I was like, I'm just telling him how grateful I was to be out there. And I think some of that kind of took away my edge. It was a little bit opposite, right? I was so in a moment of just thankfulness that I wasn't as focused as I needed to be. And I was just telling Rolfe how great it felt being out there, or I should say, how thankful to God I was to be out there. And he was like, yeah, but don't you think God wants you to give 100%? It woke me up. It was like, dang, you're right. It's good to be thankful and grateful for the position that you have, right? But at the same time, I need to be doing this. I need to get after it, right? I need to be playing as hard as I can. And so I got the opportunity to start again the next game and actually play against Colorado and scored the game winner.
There you go.
Yeah, it was definitely
redemption.
A 180. And thank God it was a Wednesday, Saturday, or Wednesday, Sunday situation, right? Or Thursday, Sunday. So we got to play right away pretty quick to shake off that rough one. We were back with Jimmy Conrad, former professional soccer player and current just media guru, media champion. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I do want to ask you about some of the challenges that you had as a player, right? Whether it was an injury or even going against higher level players, the players that you see on TV and in Serie A and La Liga and EPL, like when you played against those guys in national team games and World Cup games, what was your mindset going into those opportunities? Was it, oh man, this player's on that team and now I'm honored to play against them? Or was it like, no, I got to 2-foot this guy?
It's a little bit of both. I'm thinking about which story I want to tell. I think the one for me that stands out was we had the opportunity, and I say MLS as we, because Real Madrid always plays a friendly game that is free to fans at the Bernabeu, and their opponent fell through. And at this point, David Beckham was on the team, and he was, I think, making moves or getting close to making moves to MLS at some point. Discussions were being had, and I think he had Pepsi, who still is a sponsor, I think, say, hey, I think MLS can maybe send over a quick all-star team. So we found out on a Saturday night that we were going to potentially go. I wasn't actually supposed to go. My coach wouldn't let me go because I had just missed 8 weeks with the national team in the Gold Cup. Okay. Bob Gansler, I love him, but Chad Marshall couldn't find his passport. Bless Chad Marshall's heart. And they called me, we need Jimmy. He needs to come. And Bob Gansler called me, my coach, and I said, I get a chance to play against Real Madrid. Yeah. At the Bernabeu, like, how could you not let me do that? So he finally relented. I went, and it was me, Clint Dempsey, Landon Donovan, Pablo Mastriani, Frankie Hayduk, Shelly Joseph, Jaime Moreno. We had a good team. Matt Reese in goal. Yeah. And but we all meet in Chicago on a Sunday. Okay. Yeah. We don't land in Madrid till Monday. We go straight to the Bernabeu to practice, which is cool to be in there with nobody in there. Yeah. And then we play the Galacticos on Tuesday night. I'm talking R9 Ronaldo, Raul, Zidane, Beckham, Roberto Carlos, Iker Casillas, a very young Sergio Ramos. And they were stacked. And they had like Michael Owen and Steve McManaman coming off the bench. It was ridiculous, right? The team was insane. We wouldn't have beaten them with 2 weeks of training in their time zone, but we really didn't have any chance just showing up the day before, jet lagged. Even though I played with some of these guys in all-star games and the national team, it's just you have to be on it when you're playing against some of the best players in the world. Yeah. What I learned from this game, and I set it up like this because it's a friendly game. There's nothing on it. I watched these guys warm up, and you see it on paper. Stevie Nicol was our coach who does a lot of TV for ESPN now. Yeah. And he puts up on paper, okay, we got Jimmy, you're going to mark R9 Ronaldo on set pieces. And at that moment, you're like, that's crazy. That's pretty wild. And then you got to watch out for Beckham. He can really whip them in. And you're like, you see these guys on TV, they're just larger than life. Yeah. Of course, when the game starts, then you're just making plays. You're trying to solve problems and make plays. Yeah. So that doesn't change all that much. But I got a couple stories here. And one was I watched them warm up. And they were just playing like a big game of Rondo and laughing and goofing around. I was like, great. I hope they come out like that and just take their foot off the pedal and just take it easy. Yeah. Dude, the game started. I was like, yo, these guys aren't messing around. These guys are running hard. I know that the next week they've got their first game of the season in La Liga and all that, or the UEFA Super Cup or whatever, but they're running hard. And what I loved about that 90 minutes was that those guys worked so hard and they're so efficient with their movements. They don't just they don't run to run.
Mm-hmm.
They know exactly when to run, whether with their pressuring the ball or whether they're making a run into space. And obviously, it's got to be amazing if you're making a good hard run and Zidane's passing you the ball. You know it's going to come right to where you need it to go.
Definitely.
But when I came back from that, I was a changed man because I would see guys in MLS dogging it. And I was like, yo, I just played against the best players in the world, and those guys don't dog it.
Wow.
They work so hard to support the play that they're always an option for their teammates. They do the thankless stuff that some guys won't want to do, like they run the corners, they pressure, because they understand all the cues. They understand that if I do the work now, that'll save me having to do the work later. They understand all this stuff at such a high level that I came back. I'm still impressed by the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so that was a really important game for me. Even though we lost 5-0, it didn't really matter. Maybe we only got 2 shots on goal. It doesn't, like the experience was incredible. Yeah. And that was really cool. I'll say this one other story about that game. I went to dinner with the head of Adidas US before the game, or one of the heads. And they said, if you steal one ball from Zidane, we'll give you like $5,000 in allotment or whatever, because they just didn't think I would. Yeah. And I stole the ball from the guy 27 minutes into the game.
Yes, sir.
I kind of gave it one of those, and then I passed it over, I think, to Justin Mapp, and he gave the ball away. So I had 3 seconds. Oh, everybody was giving the ball away, in fairness to him. But, I had 3 seconds of yes, and then I was back to playing defense again. But they did honor that. I did get a little extra allotment, so I got to buy some gear for my family, which was pretty cool. But, an incredible experience. And then I got to play against Messi in the Copa America, and obviously I played against Italy in the World Cup in 2006, and they ended up being the champions. And again, nothing changed from my perspective. But that was the first time I had really seen the world's best players. I had played for the national team and played against some countries, but to see the world's best players all on the same team, it was really something else and something I'll never forget.
Yeah. Is it along those lines, because we may have some players listening, soccer players, or even just players from other sports. What was the difference between those guys that you played against that you just named and maybe others? What was setting them apart? I know I can share with you what I've seen against top players, but share with us what you saw.
Yeah, so a couple things jump to mind. One is they always have ideas of what they want to do before they get the ball. They always know what they want to do. And if one option is shut down, they already know what their second option is. And if that one's shut down, they pretty much have their third option set up as well. Wow. We tried to do this offside trap one time where I thought, based on my experience as a center back, we had put the perfect amount of pressure on David Beckham. There's just no way that he could have picked up his head and played this ball. We held the line. Bull was offside. R9 Ronaldo was offside. And then out of nowhere, Roberto Carlos just starts bombing forward from left back. Beckham plays it right into that space, and he runs because he's behind the midfield line, so he's onside. And it's just like a track meet for me, Pablo, and Frankie Haydick to get back into the play. Yeah. And what was really funny was that, and this speaks to the little things, which is like the next thing. They do the little things really well. Yeah. R9 Ronaldo, he's really the original OG of Ronaldo, but the best number 9 I've ever seen, both on TV and in person. Wow. But he turned around. He already has a step on me right now because he went from being in an offside position to now being onside because Roberto Carlos is going to touch the ball first. I'm now behind him by 2 yards. As I try to catch up to him, he turns while he's running and sticks his hand right into my throat to gain just a little bit more space, to slow down my momentum. Yeah. What? This is a friendly, dude. Like, this is like, you're already bigger and stronger and faster and better than me. Yeah. And you're still trying to gain that advantage. That's what the world's best players do. They're always trying to look for those little advantages. He didn't score on that play, thankfully. He scored 2 other goals. Yeah. And also, he got these half chances that he turned into goals as well. And the guys, their attention to detail, their quality in the subtlety and nuance of the game, their understanding of the game is really what sets them apart. But and they work hard, man. It's like nobody takes a play off, and I love that. And I love playing at the highest level. I love playing in World Cup games because the game moves so quickly. You just got to move on to the next play. Yeah. I don't know what you saw, if that's similar to your experiences.
Along the lines, man, definitely when I was in Chicago, had some really high level teammates. Obviously Blanco and Freddie Youngberg came through for a little bit, and I was like, okay, there's a difference. There's a difference, right?
Mm-hmm. There is.
The way they pass, the way they move, just whatever their idiosyncrasy is, they do it well. You know what I mean? The pace of the pass, the ideas, right? And just even the quality of composure in certain areas where I probably would have gone crazy. They just calmly slide it or whatnot. I definitely saw it when I went to LA. When I went to LA my last year, and to your point about Beckham, man, this dude right here, man, obviously one of the nicest guys that I met before. But he played a ball. We were playing 6v6 and small-sided, and it was maybe a little bit longer. I won't say maybe 18 and a half, let's just say that. And then he was trapped in the corner on the left side by our goal, like facing the other way, facing the goal. And I'm playing right back, and so I'm the outlet. And if he can get this ball to me, like, I'm on, like, I'm in. And I go, and then I stop running because I'm like, there's no way. He's got pressure on him. He's, like, facing our goal. There's no way he gets the ball or he gets his ball here. This dude somehow, some way, clips the ball. And if I had kept going, it would have been perfectly in my stride, brought it down, whatever. And then after we get done playing, he's, yeah, keep going, Desan. Keep going. I got you. Don't worry. Keep going. I'm going to get it. It showed me, like, obviously, just there's a different level, right? It's a quality. But one of the things he also showed me was that there were days where there was a day that we had a game and easily the starters could have taken it off. They weren't even going to regen or come outside. He came outside to work with guys who didn't play and things like that. And so the standard over there, the Robbie Keanes, obviously the Landons, the Beckhams, the Mike McGee's, like the standard that they put forth really from the moment, like it was all fun. But then they stepped on the field, and when it was time to play, it was time to play. High level from the top to the bottom, from obviously Beckham and Landon and those guys, all the way down to the rookies, man. It was a standard that it was next level. So I can imagine if you're in that environment from 8 years old, where it's high level, high expectation, but you're going to be that way, man. So
I'm going to use one example because there's another player similar to Blanco and Beckham and those guys, Guillermo Barros Schelotto, who's now the coach of the Galaxy, but he played for the Crew and Boca Juniors. Yeah, incredible because he's 5'0", and I could never get the ball away from the guy. Like he doesn't look very big, but he is strong. And not only that, what I love about those types of players was that he raised the game of everybody around him. And I use Robbie Rogers as an example because this is, I think, Robbie Rogers' like peak of his career. Mm-hmm. When Robbie Rogers was on the flank for Columbus Crew and Schelotto was on the team, Robbie Rogers could just bomb forward and actually run with purpose because he was playing with a player that could get him the ball. Yeah. You know how sometimes when you play, and it maybe not as reflective of our positions as lowly center backs, but if you're an outside player and you have defensive responsibilities, if you have a chance to bomb forward and maybe make this 50-yard run and take a risk to get in behind the left back, if you have a guy that's on the ball that probably can't get the ball to you, it might happen, but probably can't, you're probably not going to run with the same conviction as you would if you had Blanco or Schelotto or Beckham playing the ball, because you knew then for sure they'd get you the ball. Yeah. And if they didn't get it to you that first time, they would definitely make sure it got there the second time, whereas the other person you couldn't really trust. Yeah. And I think that limits our growth sometimes in this country for the American player, because I don't know if we're developing those types of players that are actually committed to that type of run consistently. Yeah. Right. And what at the highest levels is those guys can run because they're around players that can make that pass, that can put them into space. And it changes the whole complexion of the game. Right. When you guys played, like when Blanco was on the field versus when he wasn't, your team would play different because you have somebody that knows how to pull the strings and hold the ball and allow your team to actually transition meaningfully. So it's a big deal. And I think that's probably on us in some ways as coaches and teachers to give back to the next generation to try to look for and nurture the players that have that type of ability.
For sure. Yeah, and not cut that off, that creativity, that something that makes them different. If it's an ability to pass or ability to think a different way, a way to act or dribble or whatever it is, that creativity like you talked about, man. Not stifling that for sure, and fostering it and cultivating it. Jimmy, what do you think is the difference between players who make it and who don't? We could talk about who make the varsity team and who don't, or who make it in the college or who don't. And even at the pros, like who makes it, how do they make it? What do you think the difference is between?
That's a loaded question, Desan. I would say that when you're younger, coaches, and they have more patience for talented players. Mm-hmm. When you get older, there's still patience, but there's less of it. Because if you're going to be a problem for a coach because of your attitude or whatever it may be, then they can go find somebody else that's probably equally as talented in some ways, or maybe not, but will bring something different to the team that allows the whole team to get better. Yeah. You will, and even as teammates, right? There are certain players, maybe we've mentioned a couple of them, that have some personality traits that maybe aren't the best in the locker room at times, But because of what they do bring onto the field and how they do raise the game, and when they start to take everything serious when the game starts, you forgive some of these other traits, right? And that's part of forming a team, and that's on the coach to find the best personalities to understand how this whole thing is going to work. Yeah. Now, I don't want to use this negatively, and I don't want it to be received negatively, but I played with Preki, who won 2 MLS MVP awards. And my first year in Kansas City, after I got traded to from San Jose, we reworked our whole formation for him. We played a 3-5-2 so that Preki could play the 10 spot and not have to have any defensive responsibilities. Now, a part of me when I was younger was like, that's BS, man. Like everybody should be doing everything on both sides of the ball. But now as I've gotten older, I look back and think, no, I don't want Preki to waste any of his energy defending. I want him only to spend his energy in having the energy to be a difference maker through the whole 90 minutes, not for the first 45. Yeah. So now it makes a lot more sense to me, and I was being a little bit stubborn, I'd say, at that time. But and in 2003, he won MLS MVP. Even though we made the playoffs, we didn't get very far in the playoffs. Okay. 2004, preseason, he breaks his leg, like the nastiest break ever. I'm like 20 yards behind him, and his ankle's turned the other way. It was disgusting. Wow. But immediately after he breaks his leg, we switch to a back 4, okay? We win the Open Cup, and we get to MLS Cup final, which we should have won, and we got unlucky. So we should have won the double that year. But what I'm saying is, even though we curtailed and made everything about him, it didn't actually give us as much success as – so, yes, I just want to track back because, yes, you obviously have to have some talent. But having a good attitude and approaching the game in the right way, which is trying to get better every single day, trying to win everything, being respectful of everybody, but also holding people accountable, taking responsibility, being a good communicator. There's so many things. Yeah. And then on top of that, when things aren't going your way, how tough are you between the ears? I think that's really going to determine. You asked me earlier what was the big reason why I had a long career, and a lot of it was because I just was a little bit stronger, and I really leaned back on because I didn't get drafted, because I walked on in college, because I got told I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't going to be a pro, and you fought through that and still achieved it. That gave me a lot more confidence as I tackled or had any hurdles in front of me that I'm going to figure out a way. It might not happen right away. It might take me a week, might take me months, might take me a year, 2 years, 3 years, because I didn't get called into the national team till I was 27. Didn't get my first cap till I was 28. Most guys get a look at 21, 20. Most people would have given up at that point if they were me. But I got my first cap at 28. And a year later, I was starting in the World Cup game. So it's all there for everybody. The blueprint is there. There's more than enough examples, whether it's you or me or Michael Jordan, The Last Dance or whatever. You see all these examples of different ways to get to the top and different mentalities to get there. But I think the common thread is the ones that are the toughest are the ones that are going to stick around and figure out ways to adapt and be successful.
Yeah, no, that's good, man. Yeah. Adapt. I think that's one of the things that I learned along the way, and I was able to do for the most part was adapt. Even when I got called in the national team camp after my rookie year in 2007, that January camp, it was definitely a different pace. So you had the top players in the MLS and Europe coming in. And
I was there at that camp with you.
Yeah, I remember definitely. And it was like, okay, this is it. It was shocking and okay, we have to adjust. We got to figure it out. And toward the end of the camp, whether it was the first one or the second one, because there were 2 camps that January camp, I felt like I started to adjust. I started to play faster. And even when I went back to the Fire for preseason, I felt like my mind was faster. I was like sharp. I was playing quicker. And that difference, I knew there was a difference. And being able to adapt, definitely. Because sometimes when you get to higher levels, the same stuff that worked at this level doesn't necessarily always work at the second level. So can you adapt? Can you adjust? And things like that. And then the mind, we already know the mind is so crucial.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because I think a lot, and I have two kids, so we talk about it a lot. And I think at times they think you just hit a switch. It's like anything else. If you want to develop a first touch, you got to work on it. You want to develop a mentality, you have to work on it. It doesn't just happen because you want it to happen. Yeah. Dude, I want a great first touch. I still want a great first touch. Yeah. But just because I want it doesn't mean it's going to happen. I have to put the time in. I have to train with a tennis ball. I have to do all these little things that are going to help enhance that. And the same thing has to go with the mind. Whether you're reading books that help you think the right way and how to deal with that, which I'm sure you did as well. You find these little books or any quotes, right, that'll keep you focused and on the right path. And then you really have to decide. And I used to write down goals every single year before every season or in January.
That's great.
And some of them were attainable. Score 2 goals in MLS this season, right? Where I should score 2 over the course of a season or whatever it may be. And one of them I wrote, start a World Cup qualifier. I hadn't even been called into the national team yet. And I wrote start a World Cup qualifier. So imagine how big of a dream that is. For sure. But by the end of the year, I started in a World Cup qualifier in Guatemala City.
Yeah.
So you just have to put it down, because I feel like when you write it down, it helps you visualize actually be there, and actually you get to visualize the path that you have to take and the things that you have to do to realize that dream. And that's why it's important I think it helps to write it down as opposed to just having it as an idea floating around your head, because it makes it a little bit more concrete. And when you write it, you're starting to then lay down the framework for what you're going to do to get there. Yeah. So I am a huge goal writer. I don't do it as much as I should. I'm actually kicking myself about it. But yeah, it was really important for me as I was working my way up and trying to figure out what I wanted to do and how I wanted to get there.
Yeah. Now, did you look at it often? Like, how often did you see these goals?
Yeah. I put it in my bathroom. So every time I opened up my mirror to grab my toothbrush, I would see it. And then you already knew what it said. You memorized it after a week, but it was always there. And then it was cool when you could start checking things off. Yeah. And that year, that was 2005. That's when I played against Real Madrid and got to play in the Gold Cup, played in the World Cup qualifier. I ticked all the boxes, and I got named MLS Defender of the Year that year. So I crushed it. 05 was a good year for me.
Yeah, not a bad year at all. Not a bad year at all. And it's interesting to your point about writing your goals down. There's been some studies done that show, hey, if individuals write their goals down and they look at them often or look at them every day or however you want to put it, write them down every day, that they are 40% more likely or so to actually achieve and reach those goals than others who they have goals, but maybe they don't write them down. Or they don't look at them often or whatnot. So to your point, I don't know if you knew that before, but you are a prime example of how that works. You know?
I don't know if I saw any statistics, but I will say what helped me in high school was that I got kicked out of one of my youth club practices, okay? And I think it's pretty clear I like to find the jokes when I talk, and I try to find those social moments where you want people to like you, and that was always an easy way for me to do it, and I had a lot of success with it and still do to this day. But there are times and places as to when to use it. And for this particular practice, the coach kicked me out. I just was being too much of a nuisance, making people laugh when he's talking. And now that I'm a coach, and obviously I learned this a long time ago, like that wasn't the right time. I think sometimes he would have allowed it, but that wasn't it. So he chucked me out, and I was heartbroken. And I'm glad he did, because it forced me to evaluate, what I wanted to do. What did I want to get out of this? Why am I here? All these really important questions that you need to ask yourself. And at that point, I'm like, no, I want to be a good player, and I want to be respected for being a good player. And that means treating the process with respect, right?
Right.
But what I had to do was I can't just flip a switch and all of a sudden change my personality. I had to work on it. Yeah. So what I did was I wrote a note that said, I'm going to have a good attitude today. And I stuck it on my wall, or my ceiling, up over my bed. Yeah. So every night before I got out of bed or got into bed, I would look up at it. And then you'd start to visualize how you're going to conduct yourself in that situation again. You're going to keep it cool. People are going to try to nudge you because they're going to want you to say a joke or do something stupid. Right. And you just got to play it straight. And then when I woke up every morning, you look at it and you get on with your day, and it makes a difference. So I did it really early on, not really understanding the statistical implications of what that meant. Yeah. But visualization is so important. You have to be able to see yourself doing these things, I think, before you can actually do them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's powerful, man. And yeah, I hear that. I've heard that before. And like I said before, man, you are a testament to exactly how it works and how it can come true, man. Hey, for those watching and listening, you got goals, you got dreams, write them down often, look at them often. What you desire can happen as well. I want to switch topics a little bit and talk to you about your transition to the real world, I guess you could say.
Am I in the real world? I don't know if I am, but go ahead.
I know we talked about a couple years ago, you were here in Chicago for MLS All-Star Weekend, and you said it was surprising, but it helped me out. It helped me out because I stopped playing, I believe, prematurely, just based on fear of continuing to get hurt and things like that. But I wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready. I don't know if a lot of people are ready from transition from athletics to quote unquote the real world, whether it's pro sports or high level college sports or whatnot, or just college sports in general. But you said that for about 9 months after you finished, you were depressed. And I was taken back because I was like, wow, Jimmy Conrad, who did pretty much everything that I wanted to do for the most part, 13 years, so on and so forth, was depressed. And I'm like, just how? I'm almost like how? Not in a disrespectful way, right? But like, how could you be disrespectful? How could you be depressed? But then it helped me out to know that I wasn't alone, number one. And then number two, it was like everybody, for you going through that, it's just a different transition, and it just brought to light exactly what this transition from being a high-level athlete is to not playing anymore. So could you talk about that maybe just a little bit and
Yeah, of course.
how you got through it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was very hard. I suffered a few concussions
Mm.
during my playing career, and I was susceptible to getting them a lot easier. I don't know if I'm sure you had a concussion along the way, but I started to get them with more frequency. And I had told my wife that if I had got another bad one, that I would consider stepping down and not playing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gone to Chivas USA, where careers go to die. And I love Chivas USA, rest in peace, who are now the LAFC. And they hate that, by the way. And I just want to give a little dig to all the LAFC listeners. Robin Fraser was the coach. Greg Vandy was the assistant. Now those guys have gone on to have a lot of success. And that was really their first coaching foray in a really meaningful way.
Yeah.
And it was a rebuilding project for sure. And so I got a concussion. I got punched in the back of the head by the goalkeeper, Matt Pickens from Colorado. Didn't do it with any ill will. It was very much him just trying to clear a ball, and I got there first. And I didn't score, unfortunately, but I blacked out for 10, 15 seconds. I kept playing.
Wow.
And I took another Connor Casey, who's an absolute man mountain. I was trying to defend him like 5 minutes later, and he whipped his head back and caught me too. So I took 2 decent shots in the game. I passed all the tests, but I had a headache for 3 months. And it was really interesting. I had the birth of my second daughter, and I was 34 though. After talking with the coaches and all this stuff, it just made sense for me to just retire. And talking about it's one thing, but when you actually do it and it becomes real, once the decision was made, I was with the coaching staff, and we collectively made the decision that was in the best interest of me, right? With CTE and all this information that's starting to come out, and all the NFL players that are committing suicide and like donating their brains to science, like just heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And so on the heels of all that type of stuff happening and really bursting onto the scene, it was the right decision for sure. But once the decision was made, I went back up to my car at the Home Depot Center where the Galaxy play and Chivas used to play. Yeah. And I get in the car and I'm crying so bad I can't even talk. And I'm seeing when you're in that parking lot, I think like you see everybody walking by. And so I'm like trying not to make eye contact with anybody. And I'm trying to get the words out to my wife that it's done, it's over. And she thought somebody had died.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really apt way to describe it, because somebody had died. My career, it was done. Yeah. And what ends up happening is, and I think it's a lot easier for me to verbalize now, is that my whole identity had died.
Yeah.
I had been an athlete my whole life. I had been the soccer player in the family. I had been the professional athlete. I had been the star of my family. Yeah. For as long as I could remember, at least from an athletic standpoint. Obviously very talented people in my family. But from an athletic standpoint, I had been the one that really overachieved and succeeded, had a lot of success. And that was gone. So who was I now? And you don't know how to really, first you have to go through the process of that death, of that identity. Mm-hmm. And you don't know how to interact with people. And it's really hard to know what to say. Obviously you can talk about the generics of that, but what does it really mean underneath? Yeah. That just took me some time. Now, thankfully, I had a little bit of an olive branch extended to me because I had some media chops, and I was in LA. Fox Soccer was giving me opportunities to be in the studio and to do games, color commentary on games at 3 a.m, the FIFA Club World Cup when nobody was watching. But it was good to get reps and understand what that next job would look like. But I wasn't committed, right? I didn't know how to commit to that yet. So it just took me a long time to really understand and to really just mourn the fact that it was over. Everything that I'd worked for my whole life was done. Like everything, the singular focus doesn't matter anymore, right? So in some ways, and I think you can speak to this, the pressure of not having to perform every day, wow, it was a great relief to have that on my shoulders, right? I didn't have to prove anything to anybody for a while. But then you feel that itch to get back after it. So I'll fast forward to 5 or 6 months of doing the TV stuff, not really enjoying it, but understanding that's a new craft. And I think what happens is you have a bit of sense of entitlement, because I'm like, I played in the World Cup. Who wouldn't want to hire me? Look at this guy. Great hair, great smile. Let's go. And you start playing all these cards and you realize nobody cares.
Wow.
Yep. Nobody really cares. Like, of course, they're empathetic to a certain extent. Oh, I'm so sorry your career's over. I'm so sorry you had to retire, all that stuff. But that's the extent of it. They're not offering you jobs after it. Oh, here's $150,000. What do you want to do? Yeah. It's just not like that. And I had an opportunity to go to New York to work with YouTube. They had put $100 million into 100 channels, and one of them was going to be a soccer channel. And I'm like, all right, let's go to New York for a year and see what happens. Yeah. Not really knowing, but I knew, and this leans on my soccer career, that if I was going to get good at anything, I had to get a lot of repetitions, right? Your first touch, whatever it is, got to get a lot of repetitions. with the TV stuff, I was going into the studio once a week. So I knew that I wasn't going to get the reps that I needed. YouTube was going to be every day, 2 or 3 hours, learning the craft. And so, and obviously the excitement of maybe going to New York and trying that out. And it all worked out, right? But all those disciplines were really habits and disciplines that I had previously really helped me into this next one.
Yeah.
The biggest difference for me was 9 months later, we had to talk the people that had the budget into letting me go to the Euros. Okay. It was in Poland and Ukraine, 2012. And basically I got paid with fans. And I was at that moment, and we finally got out of the studio. We were finally like somewhere. We were at a destination. We were somewhere exciting. And we were telling these stories about what it looked like to be on the ground.
Yeah.
Really one of the first people like that were vlogging around soccer, let's say. And it was intoxicating, literally and figuratively. I was like intoxicated, but it was like, this is cool. You know, I never got to be a fan of the game before because I was always focused on being a player. And to be on this side of it now is pretty sweet. And if you're going to pay me to do it, I'm happy. So I started to embrace it a little bit more, right? I started to let go of what I used to be and started to embrace what I was going to become or working towards, right? The biggest thing for me, Desan, and the biggest thing that I would give to anybody who's transitioning to anything is you shouldn't feel entitled, no matter how much success you had before, that you're going to just skip all these steps and get to the top again. You have to start from the bottom. And the sooner that you can accept that you have to start from the bottom, the easier the transition is, because then you realize, all right, I've done this before. I can do it again, right? And your attitude changes. Yeah. But if it's all, I did all this stuff, and why isn't somebody just handing me the best job ever? Though that's okay to feel that way, the sooner you can let go of that and move on to, I bring it on. I'm going to start from the bottom and learn. Even if you want to coach, right? We have a couple guys and they're friends of ours, right? Ben Olsen, Jim Curtin, all these guys that kind of skipped steps, became assistants, and then became head coaches and have been there they're learning on the job, right?
Yeah.
And they're great guys. And so I'm glad they're still in their jobs and doing well at this point, even though they've had a lot of struggles.
Yeah.
I think it's really important not to skip steps. And I used to get into it with rookies. They'd come into the Kansas City when I was captain, and they were so jealous of this. I was with the national team. I was, all-star, all this stuff. And I said, guys, listen, if I gave you all of that all at once,
you wouldn't appreciate it.
What does it matter? Like, you didn't earn it. It doesn't mean anything. You have to earn these things, man. You can't skip any steps. And everybody's in such a big rush to get to the top, when really the best part about the whole thing is the journey. Yeah. They want to get here and get all the accolades and the blue check mark on social media and all that. And who cares about that? That's okay. Yeah. But that stuff is cool when you've actually worked for it. And it's hard to pass that on sometimes when the younger generations, obviously, and I love them, but they have an attitude. I got it. I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, then good luck. I wish you the best. There's a lot to unpack there, but ultimately there were a couple things, and time just had to pass. And I had to come to grips with it. I don't know how long it took you, but I'm sure it was very similar, because you're letting go of this identity that you were so wrapped up in, and so was everybody else.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. Listen, I've tried to go back a few times, in a couple of different ways, but I felt at some point that I was still not supposed to try to go back or whatnot. And I've been wrestling with God for a long time about, go back and all this type of stuff. But ultimately, to your point, man, you said it. That entitlement, man. When I was looking for work afterwards, right? I was like, why can't I find a job? Like, why can't I played 6 years MLS and Division I college? Why I should be handed these coaching positions, right? Or whatever you want to put it. And like you said, it's like, they don't care. They don't care. Obviously, you have to make connections and you have to know somebody, know people and things like that. But at the end of the day, if you're trying to be a college coach, right? Because if you're trying to be a college coach, you got to go be an assistant somewhere or something like that. I appreciate you sharing that, because that entitlement at times can really get us in trouble, get people in trouble if they think that something should be handed to them without putting those reps in and putting that work in, man.
Yeah. No, it's just one more thing to add to that. And I tell the guys that I coach now, nobody owes you anything. And even when I came up, even throughout my struggle and telling my story, I still feel like I was owed certain things along the way. Nothing over the top, but there is one example, and I'll give that to you really quick. But there were little things, like even I helped Ziggy win the national championship at UCLA. Why couldn't he have got me drafted, man? The other 4 guys got drafted. So I had to work through that little bit of entitlement and like expectations that I had. But the sooner you can accept that nobody owes you anything, you really approach life and opportunity in a much different way. Yeah. That's one. I'll say another thing that I have a lot of entitlement about, which really hurt me my second time around with the national team, because I had played in the World Cup. Eddie Pope wasn't going to play anymore. Berhalter was gone as well. So it's kind of like me and Gooch. But then Jay DeMerick popped up, and me and Jay are very similar, I think, in terms of playing style. And so we were competing for those spots or whatever. And when Bob Bradley first got the job, because he was still interim, if you remember, in the January camp. So he was still the interim guy. And then we went and played against Mexico in Phoenix. I remember being in an elevator with then President Sunil Gulati and Dan Flynn, who've just quit or retired. Two of the most powerful guys in U.S. soccer for the last 20 years or whatever. And they were noticeably nervous that we were going to get our butts kicked against Mexico because we didn't have our full team. Some of the European guys couldn't get over. And I just looked at them like, we got this, and tried to alleviate that pressure and stress. And they were just nervous because we didn't really kill it against Denmark. We played okay that first game. This is like the first really big game.
Yeah.
And I ended up scoring the game-winning goal and named man of the match. And I helped them. After that game, Bob got named as the full-time manager. And I always thought that he owed me a little something for that, which is a completely wrong way to think about it. And so I got called into the March friendlies, and I did okay there. And then I was going to get called into both the Gold Cup and Copa America, and I got hurt ahead of the Gold Cup, but played in the Copa America, and we didn't play particularly. I didn't play great. I got a clean tackle on Messi, so I'll take that. But then after that, I didn't get called in for 18 months. So there was like a fundamental shift, and a lot of it, yes, there are certain things where I thought Bruce Arena as a coach got me as a person. And I thought that Bob and thought we were on the same page, but then I think we got a little bit off track and the communication wasn't very good. And I don't think he got me as much as I thought, or I'd hoped that he would. Yeah. But instead of me communicating, I just assumed that he should know he's the coach, right? And so then you have that entitlement. Then you're like, I helped him get the job, but he probably didn't see it that way. We beat Mexico, and great. I got the most out of this group of players, and I got the result, and I deserved the job. So there's all these mixed things, but that entitlement killed me, man, because I thought, dude, I proved myself in a previous World Cup. I should be the guy. And it just didn't work that way. And I'll tell you, I think I had more trouble with success than I did with failure, because I had always been climbing, trying to catch people all the time. And I finally got to the top, and I'm like, now what do I do? Yeah. I don't know what to do here. I've never had to have that mentality before, as opposed to maybe just looking at like the top defender in the world and being like, all right, let's try to catch that guy. I just got up here and I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know who to talk to about it. So that was a big learning experience for me that I tried to reflect on if I'm ever kind of dealing with entitlement now.
Gotcha. Cool, man. We're going to transition again over to our lightning round here.
Let's do it.
And,
I'll be quick.
We're going to pop up some questions for you and go from there. What is your favorite team?
What sport?
Soccer.
So Sporting Kansas City is the team that I played with the longest in MLS. So they would be number one. I support Newcastle in the Premier League. So that would be number two.
All right. Best goal you've ever scored in your life?
In my life? Well, the goal against Mexico obviously stands out, scoring a game winner against a big rival. So that would be one. Yeah. But anytime I scored with my feet, because I always scored headers, it was a special occasion for me. So I had a couple of volleys, one against Brad Guzan.
Nice. Shout out to Brad.
That's right.
The best assist you've ever made?
Ooh, that's a good question. There was one, this is back in the day in MLS, where this is a funny one. I'll probably just stick with this. Where they gave double assists early on in the MLS days. And I had a throw-in.
The hockey.
The throw-in, I threw it into Manny Lagos, who did about 98% of the work, and he created a tap-in for somebody, and I got a double assist. I was like, I'll take it. Yeah, so that was probably the funniest one, I'd say.
Okay. So you said this already, but just you name some of the best players that you ever played against.
R9 Ronaldo, Zidane, Thierry Henry, Messi. Yeah. Riquelme was ridiculous. Zanetti, any of the Argentina guys. Miroslav Klose, who scored more World Cup goals than everybody else. Michael Ballack, Philipp Lahm, like all the big German guys. Yeah. Those are the countries I got to play against. Nice. Obviously, all the Italian, Andrea Pirlo, Nesta, Buffon. It's pretty remarkable. And Beckham, Roberto Carlos, the Real Madrid team. It's just ridiculous, the amount of guys. And I feel really lucky that way.
That's awesome, man. What about your best memory from playing?
What's interesting is the obvious ones, right? Playing against the biggest clubs, playing against or in a World Cup and all that good stuff. But I really loved my time in San Diego between winning the national championship and not getting drafted and all that and going down there. Because I had to decide in that moment what I wanted to do with my life. I made $800 a month. I slept on floors. I ate top ramen. I loved looking back at that year because I just didn't know if I was going to make it or not, but I was giving it everything that I had. Yeah. And I didn't think anybody was watching. I didn't know that there were some scouts at games or any of that stuff. And So I look back on that whole year very fondly. And my favorite part about this whole story is that our coach left. We were 8-8 and he left. Okay. So he went to go coach in Hungary. So we had these, honestly, used car salesmen as like assistant coaches. So we were basically running the team ourselves.
Okay.
Dude, we won 18 out of our next 20 games and lost in the semifinals like on a last-minute goal to the team that ended up winning it. Yeah, it was unreal. So that was a cool experience to learn how to manage yourself and to then work with others to make sure that everybody was playing to their best ability. So it was a magical year for me.
That's great, man. That's great. Last one is, what do you think you were born to do?
Wow, I would say succeed. As I mentioned very early on, my parents had me at a very young age, and I wanted to prove to them and to everybody else that they made the right decision by keeping me. And they easily could have obviously aborted me or had an adoption or whatever it is. And they sacrificed so much for me being born. My dad was a great musician. He really had to give that up in a meaningful way to pay for bills. You know, my mom had her own ambitions and dreams. And so she had to set all that aside to make sure I was taken care of. And I didn't want to be somebody that didn't become someone of consequence. I wanted them to reflect on that decision and think, look what Jimmy did. Look what he accomplished. Yeah. So I had to succeed. And I still have it in me, even though I recognize that's what drives me. I can't turn it off. I have to continue to prove that they made the right decision. And so it's really personal for me in that way.
That's good. That's really good. Jimmy, you mentioned a little bit about reading some books and things like that while you were playing. What books and maybe other resources have you used throughout the years to help you get to the level where you're at now?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it was a lot of self-reflection books. I think I laugh when I say self-help books. It seems like there's a form of weakness there, like you need help. But they were really helpful for me with regard to keeping me focused and really encouraging me to write down goals. So I took it to the next level because I'm a bit of an extreme that way, a little bit obsessive. Wow. OCD. That's probably easy. Obsessive compulsive. So what I would do, because I was struggling at practice, my rookie year in particular, San Jose, I kept losing the ball in just really cheap areas of the field. And so how did I get nervous in those spots? So I would really just start to watch players play. I would watch Nesta or whatever on TV, and I would take notes on the Champions League, when they played one touch, when they played two touch, who were they playing it to, when would they switch the point of attack? And I would really make it very situational. And everything that they did, I was like, I can do this. Yeah. But the thing is, they do everything very clean and they're very consistent and they rarely make mistakes. They usually make the right decision in every play. That's what kind of really separates the best from the best. So there was that. And then I started to write down my own personal goals, and I would start to notch anytime I made a mistake and to think it through and visualize again what I would do different the next time. But a lot of books helped me along the way. And I got one over here. Hold on one second.
Yeah, no problem.
There is one that's really good. It's a quick read. And it is called Mind Gym. And I don't know if it's going to solve everybody's problems, but I think it puts ideas in your head as to how you can control pressure and deal with adversity. And there's this other one, Wherever You Go, There You Are.
Okay.
And by John Kabat-Zinn. It's very Zen, but it's really helpful with regard to staying in the moment, because I had a tendency, and I think this happens to a lot of young players, where you make a mistake and you dwell on that mistake and you think about that mistake, and it really handcuffs you from being good the next play, right? And so this was incredibly important for me, and I ended up buying it and giving it to some of my teammates. They're like, I don't need this self-help crap, but you don't know when you're going to need it, and it's a nice thing to fall back on to keep you walking on that straight path and knowing that you're going to have to struggle to succeed, right? I don't think anybody there's a lot of younger players in particular that don't ever want to fail. I'm like, how do you learn if you don't ever fail, Yeah. So this is a really good book, Wherever You Go, There You Are. And it really keeps you in the moment. And I was having a tough time with that mentally because I knew what I was capable of. And when I made a mistake that didn't show that, then I would really it would double down and make it even 3 times worse for me, because I would just start to just obsess over it in a really negative way. And then I'm not good enough, and you go through that whole process. Yeah. And so this kind of helped me start to think about things and mistakes in a more positive fashion. So Wherever You Go, There You Are, Mind Gym. Yeah. These are all really good things that really quick reads ultimately that I think could help a lot of people.
That's good, man. That's good. And currently you have a YouTube channel and you have a podcast. So could you talk about those two just so people can know what you're up to today?
Yeah, sure. I think the best way to find out what I'm doing, just follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Jimmy Conrad. And then on YouTube, I'm at the Jimmy Conrad, though I haven't posted as much anymore. I did about 8 straight years of YouTube, and I just to be completely candid, I think I burned out a little bit. So I'm pivoting a little bit to Twitch. I'm still on YouTube every once in a while, but I'm pivoting to Twitch. So I'm doing some live shows, trying to merge soccer and comedy is a really bad way of saying it, but we just try to have a lot of fun and really have good lighthearted exchanges, either with guests or with these guys that are like doing bits for me. But ultimately, I see the game in two ways. One is it's just a bunch of people in small shorts kicking the ball in a certain direction, right? We shouldn't take it that serious. But then on the other hand, I see it as something that brings people together in a really meaningful way. And I've seen it all over the world thanks to my travels, and how special it is, and how much it builds community, and how important it is to so many people. And so I don't want to completely discredit the funny part and just, come on, it's not that big of a deal, but also it is a really big deal. And so I try to find a place where I can really be respectful of both. And I think that show is going to try to reflect it. I know most people go to Twitch for, watching other people play video games, and there'll be a place for that. But more often than not, I'm trying to build a community where we just get to talk about the game in a fun way. If there's a meaningful discussion to be had, whether it's, the U.S. women's national team and lawsuits, happy to have those discussions as well. But then also you can watch a game with me. We'll try to set up second screen experiences. I'll play video games and FIFA and whatever else as well. But ultimately the crux of it is that. So I just like to be creative. As a defender, we really had one job, and that was just to shut down the other team. It didn't lend itself to a lot of creativity. So I get to use this other part of my brain, and I'm excited about the platforms that exist, because they weren't really out there when we were playing. To be able to express yourself in a fun way is something I like to do.
That's good, man. Well, Jimmy, man, I appreciate you spending some time with us today, man, and joining us and sharing with us your heart, man, sharing with us about your career, your life, and obviously what you're up to today, man. So thank you once again for coming upon the podcast, and just being you and sharing with us who you are. And to my Born to Live family, appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you guys watching and listening. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to share this podcast, rate it 5 stars, so that we can get this message out to the world, so that they can have success in every area of their lives. So thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.